You alright?
Sorry. Too much justice. Honestly, I drank and I forgot to do it.
I saw. You like drank, you paused. Oh. What's going on, you guys? It's the Motorcycle Boss. So today, the ZX10 needs a good amount of work today. We have to do fork seals. I'm doing a clutch switch replacement, master cylinder rebuild, and an oil change as well. I already have an oil change video posted, but I might just upload that anyway. This video is going to be specifically about fork seals. I am going to be doing all these videos in one day, so you may see the following videos, me wearing the same stuff and the bike's in the same condition, stuff like that. So just don't be surprised if you see that. But this one's going to be based on the Showa BPF forks. There's very few videos that show anything about these forks, but I will be able to break them down and actually give you a very detailed explanation on how to rebuild them, change the fork seals, fill it up with the proper oil, all that kind of stuff. I'll try and post a timestamp to when the actual rebuild will start, and the forks are already out, but I will show you just a little bit of exactly what you need to do in order to get the forks off of the bike and begin the service. So let's get started. So you're going to throw it on some stands first, just that way it's stable. I got it specifically on a headlift stand. This one actually, I don't know if you can see it, way up there. It's actually a pin that goes in the bottom of the triple tree clamp. So that way you can lift the bike up without supporting the forks, because we're going to be removing the forks. So the bolts that you're going to want to remove in order to do this is going to be, this one is going to be your axle nut. I actually have fork sliders just in case if I ever go down and slide. Hopefully this will try and protect my rim at some point and keep my rim off of the ground. You're going to have these pinch bolts here, and make sure you loosen these evenly. And you're going to have it on this side as well. The fender is going to have to come off right here, and there's going to be one bolt there, one bolt there. This actually spins. You can remove that. It'll be the same thing on the other side. You may have a couple of other ones in the back, like these brake line clips right there. Sorry about the quality of the video. And then you're going to have up here for the handlebar, you're going to have to take that bolt out, and you're going to want, not out, but loosen at least. And this is the bar for your handlebar that's holding onto the fork. This one is holding the top of the fork, and then you're going to have two more right there. I'll try and see if I can point it to you. Those two right there are going to have to be loosened as well. And then the tire will have to be actually removed. These, one bolt there, one bolt there for your brakes. And this one also has a speed sensor, or not speed sensor, I'm sorry, traction control sensor that bolts on right there. So I'm gonna have to remove that as well. So basically anything that's attached to your forks that inhibits you from removing them from the bike is what you're going to either loosen or remove, and just make sure that the bike is supported by a headlift stand or a triple tree stand, so that way you can actually remove the forks. So I have another video explaining all this in a little bit better detail, and I will have that link in the description if you'd like to see the process of removing it. But for the sake of making this video faster, I'm not going to show it. But if you're interested in knowing if your fork seals are bad, this is what a bad fork seal looks like. So this one, if you feel this silver part on your forks, which is your front suspension, and you feel any oil, normally this ring right here is a good indication that your fork seals are blown, then that's when you'd want to do a fork seal service. Next time you see the bike, it will have the forks out. Alright, so now we got the forks out of the bike, and I want you to be able to identify a Showa big piston fork. And the way you can identify it is on the very top. It's going to have two screws. One is going to be for rebound, that says TEN for tension, and the other one is going to be COM for compression. And then you're going to have a preload adjustment on the bottom. There's going to be a little Allen dial down here that you can adjust your preload. These are going to be for 2011 and through 2015 Ninja ZX10s that I'm aware of. Through 2016 and up ZX10s, they changed to a little bit of a different style. Still going with Showa. This also applies to some CBRs as well. There's other bikes that use this fork, so this will be able to help a good number of people if you pay attention to how this all goes. There are a couple of specialty tools that you need, and I'll go over those with you. So we got the fork right here. This is kind of like a breaker bar that I'm using for my jack. We might need that later on. You're going to need some shop towels because this is going to be pretty messy. The fork oil, which this one is SS-19, which is from Showa, but Honda uses a lot of the stuff that Showa puts out. This is just some PVC pipe that I cut in half, and that's because I don't have the right size in order to drive the bushing in. This is going to be a tool from Race Tech that's going to get that cartridge thing out and the cylinder inside. This is a fork cap tool you saw me use earlier from Motion Pro to get the top cap off. This is a universal fork seal driver set. This one has little screws on the side, so that way you can actually adjust it for different diameters. We're going to use this to drive the seal in. We also have electrical tape, which you'll see where that comes in play later. This is going to be some grease to make sure that the seal gets put in nice and smoothly. A ratchet, and this is, I think it's a 17 millimeter socket for this cap. We're going to have some engine degreaser. We got a crescent wrench to be used in conjunction with this tool. These two to take the top cap off once we unscrew the top cap and slide the side down. This is to hold everything together, just a random breaker bar. You could use a steel pipe as long as it fits inside the bottom of the fork leg where the axle goes. So that way when you try and take the cylinder out using this tool, it's not going to twist on you. I'll show you that in a second. We're gonna have replacement bushings, replacement like clips, O-rings, stuff like that, as well as replacement fork seals over here. This is to get the clip out, little metal clip, you'll see that in a second. This is to get the clip out as well as taking one of the bushings out. This is a oil level gauge from Motion Pro, so we can set our oil level, and then scissors for the electrical tape. You'll see where that comes into play, as well as a catch pan in order to get all of the oil inside the fork. You're going to want a number of different rags because it will be a messy process. Now we got the parts list pretty much down. We do have a special guest this time. You've seen him before if you've been watching that other fork seal video, and it is Batman.
I'm Batman.
He's coming back to help me out with this project, and let's see how it goes. All right, so first thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to take this top cap off. We have the same tool we were using earlier. I had loosened it earlier in the video because if you wait until the fork's already completely out, it'll be very difficult to get off. It's still a little bit tight. And there isn't any pressure behind this, so don't be afraid of this snapping out like traditional forks. This one's made a bit different. Just slide that down. So if you've done forks before, first thing you're going to realize is that there's no spacer here, and you already have access to the nuts. So we're going to take these wrenches, and we're just going to crack these loose. And we're going to back that off. So just twist this cap off. It should come off just by itself. We'll set that aside. So once you take the cap off, you're going to notice this is rebound rod, and this one's also going to be your compression rod. It's all in one. You can actually bring both of these out as one. We'll set that aside. So I'm going to take this off, set it aside. Now, if you're just doing a fork service, or like an oil service, you want to tip this upside down and let it drain. There's a very small clearance inside. You can actually see the oil level from here. You can see this silver portion right here is actually what that gold Racetech tool goes down into. And you can probably, I don't know if you can see the level down there, you can actually see the oil level. So if you wanted to check the oil level, you can do it here or after we remove this, either one. And if you were going to drain the oil, you could tip the fork upside down at this stage and let it drain for a while. So now that we got this bottom secured, we're gonna use the Racetech tool. It has two different diameters for two different sized forks. We're going to go with the bigger one on this one. That's the one that fits. And then we're going to get our crescent wrench. And we are going to get good on the top. Now, I'm going to have Batman hold the breaker bar assembly that I have down on the bottom, so that way when I try to twist this off, which does require a good bit of force, it won't spin. So let's try and see if we can crack this free. You ready, Batman? Just a reminder, this will require a great deal of force. This is in pretty tight. So you ready, Batman? Alright, let's do it. Alright, ready? Let's go again.
Holy Batman, do it!
Holy. Okay, so that way it was a little too hard. So we switched it up a little bit. We're going to use the breaker bar on this side, on the top side. Actually, the tube from my jack. I have Batman holding the bottom with a different regular breaker bar. So now we're going to twist this off. This does require a lot of force. Let me get this one set up on this side. Alright, you ready? Set, go. Alright, here we go. So we'll crack that free. Now when you try to loosen this part, this is where the pressure is with the spring underneath it. So as you're twisting this, push down so that way it doesn't shoot right up. It's not going to have a whole lot depending on your preload setup. You have to, this is very fine thread, so you're going to have to spin it around a few times. Okay. There we go. So now this one's good. This is going to be the cylinder. Now it's going to have some oil in there, so I'm wiggling it around to get some of the oil out. So that way I don't make a mess of my workstation. Now that we have this out, just make sure there's no excess oil. Now even though the top is very big, I don't know if you can see inside, but the bottom is a very small hole. So we're going to set that aside. Now you can actually pull this assembly out. This is going to be your piston assembly. You hear some weird sounds. Now, for the service that I'm doing, and that most of you guys will be doing, will probably be fork seals or oil change on your forks. It does not require this to be disassembled, which honestly there's no real reason to, unless you're doing some more higher end fine tuning. So we'll set that aside. We can move towards getting the oil out. There are still some parts inside here, and as we pour the oil out, we'll catch them as they come. So as we pour this oil out, we will have a couple of other parts coming out along with it. So just be prepared for that. So this is the first one. I'm gonna grab that, Batman. That, and then you want to show them real quick. That's just going to be one of the centering brackets for the piston. Go ahead and set that aside. Next is going to be the spring. This one does not have a taper of any sort. It doesn't matter which way you put that back into the fork. And then we should have a centering dowel for it. There you go. And that's just to center the spring. It's just made of plastic, nothing special. And you're going to want to set this aside, probably hang it up on a wall or something and let this drain for a while until it stops dripping. While the fork is dripping away, I actually want to show you how everything goes back together in case you got lost and now everything's disassembled. But before we do that, I do need a drink. Let me go ahead and get one. So after we replace the seals, which we haven't done yet, this is going to be the order that everything gets put back in. So assuming that the bottom of the fork is directed this way, first you're going to start off with this centering dowel and the spring. You're going to drop that into the fork, and then you're going to have this. You're going to have one side that's big, one side that's small. You're going to have the small side facing out, the big side facing the spring. You're going to have the piston assembly that locks in right there. Then you're going to have this cylinder sleeve. It slides down and then threads in. You will have the compression and rebound rod that slides into that. You'll have the nut that threads onto that, and then the top cap. We're going to take this dust seal off. This is going to be the same procedure as it is for any fork tube. I'm going to jam this in there. We're going to try and dig this up. Around. Try not to more up your fork tube. Sometimes you can't get away with it. Okay, so we got the dust seal out, and there's going to be a clip inside as well. Retaining clip inside here that's holding the seal itself in place. We're going to have to pry that up. Be careful not to scratch the chrome surface here, otherwise the seal will not seal, it will continue to leak. So we'll pry this up. You may need to use a pick, maybe multiple screwdrivers. This is going to be same procedure as any other fork. I'm going to bring this up out of the way. Now, the only thing that is holding this assembly together is going to be the two bushings. One that's connected to this one, and one that is sitting right here, right in this area. So when you try to pull them apart, they will hit, and you have to continue to, almost like a slide hammer action, pull it apart like that. And you're not going to exert a bunch of force, just enough to tap it out. Eventually it will completely separate.
Some Batman.
Now that it's separated, we're going to set the tube aside, as you see back there, and we have everything in this order. It's going to be the bushing with the non-slip tip, like a PTFE coating on the outside. The next one will be the PTF coating on the inside. There's going to be a washer that has a very specific orientation. I'll go over that in a moment. And this is the actual fork seal that needs to be replaced. And if you see, I don't know if it's hard to see in this lighting, but this one right here, if this coating, which is gray in color, if it were to be rubbed down too far, you'll actually see metal or some copper show through. And in that case, this one would need to be replaced. I do have replacements just in case, but in order for me to inspect this one underneath it, I have to remove this one because these are the two that have been smacking against each other in order to separate the forks. So to get this one out, I'll try and spin this around. You can see that there is a slit right there. And it's sitting inside of a groove. So to get it out, we're going to use a screwdriver. Let me get my hands better, okay? We're going to use a screwdriver inside the slit, and we're going to separate it, open it up as we push up to get it over that cavity that it's in. And then we're going to slide it up with our fingers. Now, you may be able to see this in better detail. The gray color that I'm talking about, this is proving to be a good bushing so far. I'm not seeing any copper. If you happen to see, I would say more than 40% of this covered in copper, or you can see metal flakes on more than 40%, I would replace this. This one seems to be in perfect working order, so I'm going to keep this one and reinstall it. But we will check the other one, and it just slides right off. This one will be a little bit harder for you to see, but this one seems to be fine as well. I'm not seeing any copper color, any metal color showing through. It's just the gray coating, which is nice. So this one I will keep as well. Next is the washer, and you will notice on one half of the washer it'll be rounded, it'll be very soft, and on the other side it'll be very sharp, it'll be totally flat. On this side is the side that it will be facing the seal, so just keep that as a note. It's important that it stays that way. Then we'll remove the seal itself, and if you have a hard time remembering which way the seal is to orientate, you can take note of it now. So this is the offending fork seal in detail. So as you can see here, this one has some letters, some numbers, some markings on one side, and if we flip it over on the other side, you'll see it has no letters or markings whatsoever, but it does have a deep crevice in the center all the way around. So the letters and numbers will always face outside of the fork towards the dust seal when it's reassembled. So if for this one being an inverted fork type, the letters and numbers will actually face the bottom of the forks when they're assembled on the bike. So always have these facing outwards, as if you were to remove the dust seal, you could read the letters if you needed to. Now we're going to take this piece, this one, as well as this one, are the main parts that you'd want to clean. I am using engine degreaser for this. You can use soapy water, you can use pretty much anything you'd like, really. But just make sure that everything is clean and check for any burrs, defects, deep scratches and scores that may be on this tube right here. And once all those are clean, we'll move on to the next part. Now that everything is pretty clean, I saw no serious scratches or anything like that. I do see a little discoloration here, but it's nothing I can feel with my fingernail, so that one's not going to be a big deal. Still going to seal well. So first thing is going to be the dust seal. I'm just going to put everything in reverse order. When these come from the factory, they have a little film on them. So I'm just getting some of that, some white crap they have on it. Alright. Now before we slide anything over here, what I like to do, and there's other means of doing this, is I'm going to actually use electrical tape, and you're going to feel this groove right here that first bushing was on. It's very sharp, as well as the top of the fork can be a little sharp as well. These holes right here can be a little sharp, and as we slide the seal and other, like the dust seal and such, over this, it can damage the inside of it. So to protect it, I'm going to wrap these sharp edges in electrical tape. They do make products for this called the Seal Bullet, which is like a plastic sleeve that slides right over and can protect it as it goes down. But this is just what I like to do. There are other ways of doing it, but this is just my method. So now that I have the electrical tape where I like to have it, we're going to start off with the dust seal, because that was the first thing to be removed. You'll notice the lip, kind of like a cone. You're going to make that face down. I'm going to slide that over. And slide that all the way down to the bottom. The next one that's going to go on here would be the metal clip, but to make sure it doesn't rattle around while I put everything together, I'm going to leave that out for now. I can put that over later. The next piece that will be on is going to be the seal itself, and the seal, which I have over here, is going to get dressed up in a little bit of a special way. So to protect the seal as it goes down, I'm just very overly cautious. This is the method that I use. There are many other methods, do what you see fit, but this is how I go about it. I take a regular like sandwich bag or whatever and cut off the bottom section of it. And then I open up the other side and I wrap it around the fork. So I take the bag, the side I just cut, I put over the top of the fork, and then this I shove inside the top. And then I'm going to take my grease and my fork seal. I'm actually going to lubricate the inside of the fork seal with a little bit of grease. Feel free to add a little bit more than you think, because most of this grease will actually end up on this bag. Or if you have a fork seal bullet, it'll end up there as well. So you can overload this just a little bit. And this is all just to protect the delicate inner lip of the inside of the seal. Because if you don't protect this and you put it back on, it'll start leaking right away if it gets damaged during the assembly process. And as I showed before, letters, numbers, markings, all are going to be facing the dust seal, and the dust seal is already on. So you flip it that way, and then you're going to put this over the top. And then you are going to basically use this to protect it while it goes down the fork tube. And then you're going to pull this through, pull the bag up, and let the seal kind of go down. We're done with this bag. So now we got the seal down there, which is nice. Now the next parts no longer need the electrical tape, so we'll remove those. So now we're going to get the little washer spacer thing. The side that's totally flat will face the seal we just put in. Go ahead and put that one on. And then we're going to put our bushing. We're going to put our bushing with the coating on the inside down. And then we're going to take the other one with the coating on the outside. We're going to have to separate this. Slide that down. There we go. And now we will take this tube and we're going to take a little bit of our grease and we're going to go from here up. We're going to very lightly grease the inside, so that way the bushings and the seal will go in smoothly. Okay. Now we're going to take this one, we're going to flip it upside down and drop it in. we're going to allow the bushing with the coating on the inside to drop down, as well as our washer. Next thing is we're going to drive that bushing. Right now it's sitting about here. We need to drive it all the way down in its recess. So there are special tools that do this. However, the universal seal driver I have right now is a seal driver only and won't reach down far enough. So what I've done, you can take some PVC pipe and just cut it, and this will be soft enough where it will not scratch the chrome tube, and then you'll be able to get some kind of weight. For instance, the seal driver I have. There are plenty of other ways to go about this without these tools, but you can throw these on and use these as the driving force to send everything home. Just get creative. So now we're going to bash it down in its recess. And we will check the progress. That's perfect. So you'll be able to see inside. I can't show you because it's hard for me to see, but you will be able to see once you move that spacer or that little washer. You'll be able to see a slight lip that the washer is no longer able to go past, and that will be the deepest that this will be allowed to go, which is perfect. That's perfectly seated. Now we can move on to the seal itself. So we'll pull this down, and right before we throw it in, we're just going to put a very light coating of grease on the outside. And this grease will allow it to help to make sure that it doesn't go in unevenly. So we'll set it in. You're going to want the tube raised. And now we're going to grab this, and this is going to apply downward force to the outer ring of the seal. The sealing surface of the seal is in the center, and it's the most fragile. So you want all of the pressure to be contacting the outer portion of the seal to drive it in. So we're going to try and get it seated slightly, just a little bit right now. And then we're going to get our halves. This part requires 3 hands sometimes, so I apologize if it doesn't look that great. But you're just going to kind of bash it in a little bit and just make sure it does go in evenly. I like to twist it to make sure I give special attention to different parts to make sure it does go in as evenly as possible. Let's check our progress. Now this only has to go in deep enough to where you can see the groove that the clip resides in. And make sure that it's even all the way around. This looks fine, but just to be safe, make sure that it does go in all the way. I'm going to drive it in just a little bit more. But it's looking like we're pretty much there. I'll provide a link in the description to where I picked up this tool. It's actually very cheap, and you can use it for many, many forks. And it's looking like we are golden. So I can see that groove all the way around that clip goes in. The clip, do not just force it over because it can scratch this. So I'm going to pull this apart. Just trying to hold the tube and make sure it doesn't fall at the same time is kind of a pain. But you're going to want to pull this apart and make sure it does not contact, doesn't scratch it as it goes through. We're going to set it with the rear in first, push the rest down, and then we're going to get our pick, and you should hear it click, it snap in place. That's one. Then we'll go all the way around. Should have one more click. That's the other one. And just make sure it is fully seated. And we're good. Now the dust seal that was put on initially will slide on. This one you do not have to drive in. Just make sure that it's fully seated. Once you're good there, we are able to move on. Now it's time to put a couple of things down the tube. You make sure that this is fully compressed, push down all the way. And first two to go in is going to be the centering dowel and the spring. The spring does have a measured length for this particular bike, or this setup suspension that it's supposed to be at. I have already measured this one and it is within serviceable limits. Depending on your bike, it may be different, possibly. So consult your service manual for the correct specifications for that. But this one does not taper, so it doesn't matter which side is which. This will go inside and then drop inside the fork. Oops, there we go. And we're going to get the centering plastic hub thing. The big side is going to go down. The small opening will face upwards. Get that center in there. There we go. Now, before we add anything else, we now have to set our oil level. Now, this particular fork with this particular bike calls for Showa SS-19 fork oil. I'm going to be using that exact same amount. Now, there's a specific height that the oil is supposed to be at. Depending on your service manual or the size fork that you have, it will be different amongst different models. So consult your service manual for that specification. But first, you want to raise the level to about here or so, somewhere in this area, and then give it some time for the air for any air that's remaining inside to bubble to the top. So we're going to add this in the center. And just keep an eye on your level. You don't want to overfill this. Okay. I'm going to open up another container. So now the level is about right here. And now I will let this sit for a moment, and you'll see random bubbles come up to the surface, and those are a little bit of air that's been trapped underneath. As the bubbles rise, the level will drop, so wait for this to stabilize and we'll come back to it. Now it's been sitting for a while and I haven't been seeing any bubbles come up. Now we have to set the fork oil level, and every fork will be different, so there isn't one set specification. For my setup, the service manual calls for 85 millimeters plus or minus 2 millimeters. This is Motion Pro's fork oil level tool, and it has markings on here telling you how far from here it is. The way to use this: have the fork fully collapsed. You're going to set the measurement that is set by your manufacturer. You're going to throw this in, make sure it is perfectly level, and then you're going to begin to suck the fluid out. If when you pull this it starts to suck fluid, that means that the oil level is higher than what the specification calls for, and as you suck the fluid out, the level will drop until it starts to suck air, and that indicates that you have the proper level. If when you start pulling it, it's sucking air, you need to add fork oil until you start to suck fluid. So we'll start. So we're getting fluid in. We're going to wait for that sound. Now we have the correct level, and this excess oil I'm actually going to put back in the container, this perfectly usable fluid, so we can use it for another project. Now that the level has been set, we can put our piston back in place. And we are going to trap a little bit of air with this, so send it down to the bottom. And then we're going to slowly purge some of the air. Don't allow it to suck any more air in than needed. So just do this a few times until you stop seeing air bubbles come to the surface. So now the bubbling has stopped. So next thing we're going to do, get that out. We're going to take our cylinder. We're going to throw that in. And because that small hole between the cylinder and the piston is so, there's very small tolerance, as you push down it will try to overflow on the sides. So just allow it. If you see, if I let it sit, it is very, very slowly going down. And this is what I like to do, is allow it to just drop. You may see the level rise on the side, so just raise the tube to keep it from overflowing. You'll see that inside it will start to fill up with oil slowly. This is fine. You may have to encourage it a little bit. You'll get a little bit of overflow. Once it has dropped just about the full entire way, we're going to grab our tool, drop it in, and now we have to thread this back in while pushing down on it. Now you can twist it and until it engages. Probably a better way is to push down and twist backwards until you feel a click, saying that the threads are ready to be threaded back in. We'll push down until it stops. Continue to push down as you thread in. I like to go backwards when I do that because it's a very fine thread. It's very easy to mess up, and that kind of makes it dummy proof. So continue to screw down until it comes to a stop. Right there. Now we're going to take our breaker bar and we're going to put it through the bottom of the fork as before. Now in order to loosen and tighten the cylinder, you can use a vise if you don't have another person to help you. We're going to get this. There is a torque spec for this, however, I feel like there is no need to use it because I feel like the torque that it had was a little excessive, but I'll put a almost similar amount of force on it. That should be good enough. Take this back out. Now we'll put our nut back on and we'll thread this all the way to the bottom. We'll take our compression and rebound rods. We'll put those inside. And you should notice a little spring action on both of these. Should both spring back. Once that's said and done, we'll take your cap and you'll thread this on. Now you're going to thread this on until it stops itself. You don't have to press hard, just a light spin until it stops. Right there, it came to a stop. Now we're going to thread this nut up to it until it stops. Right there, that's when we grab our two wrenches and we will just cinch those up against each other. They don't have to be on crazy tight, just tight enough. That should be more than enough. And here, we're going to lift up. Yet again, we'll probably back off until we hear a click. That click. Now you used to have to set the height of these screws. However, with this particular fork, you don't have to, which is pretty nice. And once you get this tightened down, you can tighten it the rest of the way. Once the bottom clamps hold on to the fork inside of the bike, once it's installed, and you can tighten it up the rest of the way. There's really no need to tighten this very tight, simply because the top yoke will have a clamp around it that tightens it pretty good, and it won't allow it to back off. So now that everything's assembled, we're going to throw it back on the bike. Assembly is just the reverse of disassembly, and then we will go on a test drive. So now that the fork rebuild's all taken care of, I just got back from a test drive and it is running beautifully. The suspension's actually performing very well. I may have to tweak it again. Just seems like things are a little bit off as far as just maybe the fluid weight, even though it's the same that I put in there. Maybe it just feels a little bit different. All I have to do is just turn a couple screws on the cap and I should be good to go. But aside from that, they're running beautifully. They do not have any leaks, no oil whatsoever, and they're absorbing shock very well. So it was a successful project. I hope that this video was able to help you guys. I did put a lot of effort into making this video for you, so I would really appreciate a like, a comment, and if you're not a subscriber, I'd love it if you were to subscribe. The whole point of my channel is to help you guys save money by showing you how to do simple things with hopefully basic hand tools. Sometimes I use specialty tools like I did in this video, but hopefully it's able to help you guys out nonetheless. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that. Share it with your friends. This may help someone else. So definitely appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.